Thanks, Stella. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another RJSWM's Wealth Seminar. Thank you to everybody who keeps registering and sending information and pre-questions for these. You really do help set the pace and also set the agendas for today's webinars and the many more that we're going to continue to do. If nothing else, this coronavirus has given us a new insight and a great insight to increasing communication and using webinars to talk to people just like you. So thanks very much. And thanks for sharing so much thought and ideas into what you'd like to hear today. The questions and situations posed to us today have come across some really common areas. Everybody's looking for opportunity. Everybody's looking to secure their family, looking for ideas around, am I doing enough now? Have I done enough in the past, or should I have changed things? Should I be able to review that and think about the future? How do I set myself and my family up for a secure future? How do I become empowered and gain information and ideas around the ability for me to make educated decisions or choices for my personal and financial situation? And then how do I put them together and continually review those to make sure I'm on track? They're great questions, and we'll address them more specifically during today and at the end. And as Stella just said, please feel free to type away in the question and answer section at the bottom of your screen, and we'll address those during today as well. I'm joined by three fantastic professionals who are also great humans as well, in Tony, Roy, and Kat, KP, sorry, and we'll get to those guys in a minute. What I'd like to talk a little bit about today, those commonalities and fantastic questions that you shared with us. How do we start to address those, and how do we start to build some messages around to help people just like you? So let's get stuck into a little bit about us before we talk all about. Thanks, Stella. We'll go to the next slide. I should also manage, ladies and gentlemen, we are live today. We're in multiple offices across Australia. All of these are recorded. We've got an enormous uptake, and in fact, we had a record-breaking pre-registration. So for those of you who would like to share this with friends, please let us know. We're happy to forward it on. We have got quite a number who've registered but couldn't make it today as well, but a fantastic group, a really large group across Australia today. So please bear with us if IT doesn't quite work like it just did then, and there'll be a couple of changes of slides. But let's talk a little bit about RJSWM and your full scope advice or integrated advice firm. 10 locations, 100 plus staff, and 35,000 clients. Fantastic business position to help you across all of your financial decisions or discussions or inquiries. Train staff to empower you to make educated choices or educated decisions about your financial future. Fantastic group. Thanks, Stella. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we help you reach your financial potential? The key to every discussion and every meeting that we have is you guys are at the center of everything we do. You're seeing this pictorial here shows it perfectly, putting you at the center and then surrounding you with a team of specialists. We've got accounting specialists, self-managed super fund, tax, minimization, structuring, ownerships, financial advice, wealth creation, risk, estate planning. Enormous amount of personal advice needs to go into your goals to ensure you have a strategized, planned approach to achieving them. And of course, reviewing them along the way to making sure you're on track and making sure you're ahead of them. So surrounding you and your goals is what we're trying to do. So a wealth of financial intelligence, integrated solutions is really the key to remove any blinkers that you may have in any of your questions or queries coming to see your advice professional. No matter where you enter RJSWM, asking more questions is the key, and expanding your goals allows you to remove your blinkers. In other words, receive a deeper and wider discussion and receive more integrated advice to answer your queries, because believe it or not, and we'll talk about this a bit today, answering any of your queries in singularity actually blocks you to other opportunities. And we'll talk a bit more about that today. So our guiding vision is really making sure that you receive your lifestyle goals beyond expectation and working as a team of your professionals to help you achieve your goals. It's a fantastic place to work. Thanks, Stella. Okay, general advice warning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a very wide-reaching discussion. It's fantastic discussion, and much of what we'll talk about will be really pertinent to you. In fact, you helped build it, so I won't be surprised if you hear some of your own questions out today. Please be aware our answers are not specifically designed for anybody today. So this is not individual or personal advice. It's very general in its approach and talks about lots of wide-reaching areas that you should be discussing with your finance professionals. Anybody at RJ Sanderson can direct you in the right way to have much further and deeper discussions. Very general today. If you would like to talk personally, and I think you should, because this is fantastic strategies to address your goals, then sitting with any number of the team members at RJ Sanderson is the way to go. Thank you. Thanks, Stella. Okay. The fantastic people we have with us today. Tony Sarai, head of our investment committee and also executive planner and director. Tony's going to be leading today's discussions, aptly supported by Roy Sanderson, director and founder of RJ Sanderson. So Roy's going to talk to us about accounting, business, and is there to answer any questions you have available today. And of course, also helping is KP or Katarina Pulbrook, also an executive planner, as many of you know, been with the firm for a very long time. So fantastic team here to help today. My job is to direct some questions. I do see the questions you write up on screen, and I will be directing them to the appropriate people. So please feel free to jump down the bottom. There's question and answer. Someone's come through already. I'll address that in a second. Well, here we go. How do we create more wealth and health during this time? Fantastic question from Huey. Well done. So that's a fantastic question, and I'm sure we're going to address that today, along with many others. But that really does encapsulate many of the questions you've already got. So great questions, because getting your finances right is just one part of it. Making sure your family and your own personal health and structures is also very, very important. So great question, Huey. We will come to that. Stella, if we could move on, please, to the next slide. What's on the agenda today? The current market position and what are the experts saying? For those of you who didn't join us in our previous webinar, we're fortunate enough to have our wider investment committee teams join us as well. And we had people, ex-economists from RBA, from the RBA. We've got head of Australian equities, head of international equities, an enormous amount of power and experience available to us. And they shared some fantastic global, macro and microeconomic insights into what's ahead of us and how we can be prepared for what's happening now, prepared for the future, and also some great insights on what's historically happened and how we can work our way to a better position. So we're going to leverage off that and then to cover what can we learn from the experts' insights, and then furthermore, the wealth strategies for accumulators and retirees. What strategies can you put into place based on this enormous amount of insight, an enormous amount of experience that you can put into place today to start making a difference for you and your family to reach the security that you're after, to reach a point where you feel empowered to make educated choices, and to reach the point where you can feel safe and happy and start to think about other things. As Huey just pointed out, think about your health and the rest of your family because you've got your finances sorted. And then finally, what to consider during times like these. In other words, what opportunities are available to us and what can we do to start to take advantage of them. Without any further ado, we're going to move on to Tony Sarai now. Thanks, Stella. Thank you. Tony, I'll hand over to you to take us through the next few slides. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Paul, and welcome for today's webinar. So let's start with, what are the experts saying? So as you would have heard over the last few months, the economic data is the worst on record. So as it says here, the world economy will experience the worst recession since the Great Depression. Global crisis, both advanced economies and emerging market and developing economies are in recession. Major economies have also been significantly downgraded. And this data is from the IMF. The one thing to take into consideration here is that the economic data that we display here and the economic data that we receive and speak about is all backward looking. So as an example, you're sitting at home after dinner or whatever the case may be, and you've got the news on and they're talking about the GDP figures, or they're talking about the unemployment figures. Those figures are not today, they are then for the previous quarter. And so that's an important thing to recognise, because the data that we're seeing at the moment, whilst we know at this point in time is, and I'll take you back over the last month or two, when the whole country is in lockdown, the data is not going to be great. And so when you do have people working from home, or some people that can't work from home, or some people that have lost their jobs, the data is not going to be fantastic. So what's happened as a result is that the market has started to see through this and say, the market is forward looking, and the market looks through this to say, well, okay, well, we know where we are today, but where are we heading in the future? And the economy can turn around quickly. And I do like this graphic here, quite simply for the fact that it talks about declines. So when we have a structural decline, so a structural decline as an example was the GFC. In terms of a decline in terms of markets and the economy, we saw a reduction there of 55%. The average length of recovery, the average length that we were in that period of time was between 40 and 45 months. And the average time to recover was anywhere between 100 and 120 months. Now, the current event that we are going through at this point in time is not structural or cyclical in nature. It is more of a one-off event-driven event. And as a result, when you look at the previous history of event-driven events, what happens? Well, the average decline is significantly smaller. You have the actual average length of it is shorter as well, and the average time to recovery is also shorter. And we're starting to see this. And by looking at the next slide, one of the common questions that we get as advisors, well, what's the recovery look like? Is it V? And pick a letter of the alphabet. Is it V-shaped? Is it U-shaped? Is it the old Nike swoosh shaped? Is it the Z-shaped? Now the Z-shaped is much like a V-shape, but it then continues to outperform, and then it comes back down again. Quite simply because the economic spending that the government's been, or the stimulus that the government's been throwing out there, has actually started to wear off. Is it W-shaped, or is there an L-shaped recovery? So these are all important questions. And the one thing that I would say is in the current environment and the way that we see it at this point in time, and I'll take you back to the previous slide, is that because it is event driven and people think, well, okay, look, we have been at home, but we are getting back to work. I'm up here in Queensland at the moment. Paul's in New South Wales, and the majority of our clients that are on today are in, whether they be in Victoria or just southern New South Wales, Albury. You can see that, well, Queensland's opened up. I won't say business is back to normal, but we have certainly got restaurants open and where we can have 20 people sitting down and having lunch or dinner or whatever the case is. We do have things that are starting to get back to some sort of normality. Not the way that it used to be 3 or 4 months ago, but starting to get back to that. And the markets are actually seeing that. And they're seeing that globally. So this is something that I put into the slide pack probably about half an hour before we kick things off. This is an article from this morning. So the S&P 500, the US market, has wiped out the losses made in this financial year. So as of close of business last night or early this morning, the S&P 500, the US index, is at the same point as it was on the 1st of January. So if we're looking at 2 points, the 2 points will say that from 1st January to where we are today, it was just a flat line. So that is really interesting, quite simply because it means that people in the US are saying, well, okay, look, I get what's happening at this point in time. I'm talking in our financial sense, and that things will start to get better and over a period of time. Now, over that period of time, we're not sure what period of time, but they know that things will get better sooner rather than later. And it's important to note that the share market is not a reflection of the average small business. So if I owned a coffee shop and I had 6 employees, we can all understand the fact that when we go from sit-down service to takeaway service, I don't need 6 employees, so I've got to let a few employees go. When we then had to shut up shop, as an example, then there's nobody working whatsoever. When we start to open and you can only have 10 people in there, well, maybe there's no need to employ 6 people. So it'll just be myself and my partner as an example. And from there, we'll start to employ 1 and 2 and then 3. And we may not get back to 6 people for another 12 months. That is small business. Larger businesses, different story. So larger businesses, and as you can see here, you've got the Microsoft, the Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, and Facebook. They make a significant portion, of the US market. And these are big companies. I mean, they have capitalization greater than a fair chunk of countries out there as well. So when, as an example, if Roy's working from home or Paul's working from home and we have a discussion amongst the business from a leader's perspective, well, okay, look, Paul, look, if you're going to be working from home, we'll give you a new a MacBook to work from home, and we'll put Microsoft on there as an operating system or whatever the case is. you know, you're using Google or Alphabet. People now being at home, they're shopping more, and especially in the US, Amazon's the #1 place to go, and so on. So these companies are big companies, and they are still profitable, and they're making a lot of money. And that is where we've seen that recovery in the US. And so if you go back to, and they used to be called the FANGs, but there's a few more companies in there now. These tech companies have certainly led the US market back to a recovery that is more V-shaped than the other type of shapes.
That's a great insight to how the markets and businesses work. You know, we all watch the news and see the horrible and terrific and terrible things going on in America at the moment. But the stock market keeps going up. People are still seeing a positive future. It just shows the complete difference between what the economy is doing and what the market's doing.
And very much so, and that's where the market is forward looking. So whereas the economy, when you listen to economists and you listen to the data is all real data, but it's looking backwards. And so therefore it is important to say, well, okay, from an investment point of view, what am I looking to invest in? I'm looking to invest in the greater good of Australia or the world and these companies, and I want to be an owner of these businesses because they're fantastic businesses with great balance sheets. So if I'm an owner of these businesses and I know they're going to make money, well, I want to be a part of that. Whereas, you know, if I've got my coffee shop, yes, that's me, that's my own, but, you know, this is somewhere where else I can make money. I can make my money work harder for me.
And that's what adds that real level of complexity, you know, understanding what's going on in the local economy or even the global economy isn't what's reflected in the investment economy. So people are still putting money in and making money, even though global economies are going backwards.
Correct. And those global economies will recover, and they will recover, and it's just time. Okay, and as it always has been, some will recover better than others, and there may be, you know, changes towards the top of this country is doing better than this country or whatever. But you've got to look at the underlying companies. You've got to look at the business models that they have. You've got to look at the way they operate, the balance sheets, the cash flow, and take all of that into consideration. And from an investment perspective, this is what we do on a day-to-day basis as part of the investment committee: is look at this in detail. We then provide this information to our advisors at RJS, and these are the investments that we say, well, okay, this is where our clients should be invested in, or these types of investments. And that's where the RJS advisors, myself included, where we sit down with clients and say, well, okay, look, based on your circumstances, based on your strategy, then based on the investments that we're looking to undertake, this is what we're going to invest in.
Yeah.
And all markets aren't created equally, so tread carefully. Goes to the point before. So US and European companies are financed differently, and there's been a rising funding costs in emerging markets as spreads have recently blown out. Just something to be aware of. So we look at that and say, well, okay, here's a good place for us to invest at this point in time. Now that won't be the same place in 6 months' time. And that's why it's another reason it's important to seek advice on a regular basis and meet with your advisor on a regular basis to say, well, look, am I still on track to where I need to be? So what can we learn from these experts' insights? So, and how can we apply that to a household's finances? So it says here, look, do you have a budget, cash flow, insight, and a balance sheet? And what do you do with your surplus income? I'll actually break it down to, and a question that I often ask clients is, if you had to rate yourself, if you had to give yourself a rating as a household, what type of business would you be? Would you be a Microsoft or an Apple? Or would you be a non-for-profit? So money coming in, but money going out, and there's nothing left over. And that's an important question, quite simply because the more money that you're able to make and have surplus cash flow with, you're able to do more things. And think of it from a business perspective. If I've got more income coming in, it allows me to do other things, whether I buy another business, whether I go expand this part or whatever the case may be, but that provides for greater income coming in. And so I go buy another business, that business does well, I get more income coming in, I can buy another one, and so on. Whereas if you're running a non-for-profit, money in versus money out, well, all we have is all we have. And so from a household perspective, it's really important to make sure that we are knowing what comes in and then also what goes out. And that is not the easy thing to do.
Yeah, simply spend less than what you earn and do something smart with what you got left doesn't always be that simple, Tane.
Very hard to do. It sounds easy, but as an example, businesses use bookkeepers and accounting packages. For individuals, look, from my experience, people just don't have the time. And that is it. With all the things that are going on around the world, even lockdown and things like that, last thing that people want to really be doing is sitting down and saying, well, okay, look, I've spent, $1,500 in this last week, and I had, $1,700 come in. Okay, I'm up by $200. Right? People don't want to do that. So where we can help from an advice perspective and a strategy perspective, especially if I'm talking about, whether it be KP, so Katrina, Joel, Trevor, is that they can assist you with that from a budgeting perspective and say, well, okay, look, you just provide us the data. Okay, we'll come back to you with the information. And all we do is come back to you with the information. But then we won't tell you how to prioritize your spending. That's up to you. Okay, and so you tell me what's important for you. And that way we can then start planning about where you want to go.
So you can make an educated choice.
Absolutely, and it leads on to the next slide, which is, do you have the financial goals and a strategy map to get there? Dream big, set goals, take action. Look, these are all easy things to say, but it's hard to do, and it's important to look at it and say, well, okay, what is it that I need to put in place, and even getting your financial goals in place. I have flashbacks when people say goals, and I look at financial goals for a living. But I have flashbacks when my parents telling me when I was at school, oh, you got to set yourself goals, and for studying and things like that. Whereas I think what, as advisors, we are now able to do is just break it down even to a very simple and easy to understand language. Look, tell me where you want to be in the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. What do you see yourself doing? Where do you see yourself spending money? What are the big things that you're spending money on? And is there anything different?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be more complex than that. And from there, it's about then just asking the right questions. And it's about the advisors then. And look, we've got a very talented group of advisors which will actually ask you questions, and they'll dig in and they'll want to know more about you and want to know more about what you're looking to achieve, because what we do as advisors is we actually work backwards. And so, okay, we know what you want, we know what you've got. Okay, how do we make it all happen?
What's the missing bit in between? If I could change gears a little bit there to you, Roy, you'd be having these same discussions with your business owners. You'd be talking about cash flow, balance sheets, three-way forecasting. Talk to me about how that works with your business owners, because I think it's enormously important. If we understand that, we can do that in our own homes as well.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It is something that we've adopted some time back. We call it the GAP program, Goal Assessment Process. And accountants and us, historically, we're working up the balance sheet and the profit and loss. But we now, with our business clients, like to sit down and set out what the goals are. And interesting when Tony says he remembers as a child being told, set your study goals, etc. I remember exactly the same. And even in my first job, maybe my second job was in the housing industry, and setting the goals within the team was crucial. And then going away and saying, well, guys, personally, set your own goals on what you want out of life. And I remember one of my first listed goals was to buy a brand new car. And, that changed. I didn't get a brand new car. It didn't happen. I think I had maybe 5 or 6 cars before I got a brand new car. And that was that goal back then. But I think the world has maybe forgotten or maybe cliched a little bit about setting goals. But I think it's critical, not just from the business perspective, but the personal perspective. Because when you know your goals, and that doesn't mean just have them up in your head. That's about actually writing them down. Then you know what actions, what are the paths I need to take to try and achieve them. We don't all achieve our goals. That's the reality of life. But at least you have them written down and you know what actions you should take.
Yeah. And you do that same discussion with business owners and then track that with the metrics as well.
Yes, the conversation is often what the business goals are, but then we will ask individually with the two owners, and it might be a husband and wife, and we'll ask the husband or the wife first what their personal goals are, and then we shift the focus to the other partner and say, well, what are yours? Because often they're not the same. You know, one partner wants somebody to retire early, one partner doesn't really. We want to achieve another thing. We want to actually go on that overseas holiday. I want him or her to work an extra 2 or 3 years. So it's good to have those conversations at those levels as well.
Yeah, we've spoken a lot about that, and one of the biggest hints I've heard people say is have those conversations at home over a bottle of wine, a couple of beers, or a cup of tea, and make sure you're on the same page before you sit in front of the professional, so you can dig deeper and have more wider discussions. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Roy. That's great insight. Sorry, Tane, back to you.
You're right. No, and look, and the one thing Roy mentions, and I think we can cover this off there as well, is that the one advantage you have is, whether it be from an accounting perspective or whether it be from a planning perspective, is that you've got someone to hold you accountable as well. The hardest thing with setting goals is you set the goals, and unless you're living them, they're harder to achieve. And so it becomes really important. So as an example, when I know from an accounting perspective, you go in and see your accountant and, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? From a planning perspective, it's no different. You've told me you were looking to do this. When you sit down with me in 6 months' time, hey, look, one of my questions, what's changed? Are you still on track to head down this path? Tell me more about this. And it's easier when you're discussing it with someone and you're getting extra insight into it.
Yeah.
So how can we apply that to household finances? And the other thing that we look at is, what are the potential roadblocks to achieving those goals? And from a financial perspective, are you prepared for the next downturn? One of the things that I will talk about is, there will always be a downturn. If we're talking about markets in particular, there will always be a downturn. Anyone that says it's smooth sailing, it's obviously not. I've been doing this for over 20 years now, and there will always be, and there's been books written, scholars have written papers about, greatest downturns and so on. There will always be another one. So if you've missed this one from a buying opportunity, maybe not maybe, there will be another one. I just can't tell you when. Which leads me on to strategies for accumulators and retirees. So it is not easy with the different structures and the different areas that you can invest in or to have in place. You have your personal assets, which you can have in your own name, where tax is up to 46.5%. You've got the company tax rate, anywhere up to 30% round figures. You've got super and self-managed super funds, where tax rates start at 15% and go all the way down to 0. You've got family trusts, and it is easy to get it wrong. And so one of the important things is to say, well, okay, look, get advice in relation to, where should I have my money invested, or where should I have, how should I be structured? And that's where, whether it be Roy or Katrina, sit down with you and say, well, okay, based on your circumstances, this is what we need to have in place. Actually, the one point I will make on that, and I know, Paul, you mentioned this earlier today, was, and actually, I'll throw over to Roy. Roy, we often see where people try and do it themselves, and they end up with the wrong types of structures. Did you want to just spend a few seconds on how hard it is to clean that up and get people back into the right structures that they should be in?
Yes, Tony, if you don't get the building blocks right at the start, then you're going to be all over the place as you go forward. And unwinding can be messy and difficult. And it's one answer doesn't fit all. The questions we're going to ask about family, ages, what we're trying to achieve. Are we wanting to sell out the business? Is that what we're trying to achieve? We're trying to make profits, which we normally are, but is the real profit's going to be on sale or throughout the business life? There's so many questions and circumstances that you need to consider. We know we have one target from a tax planning point of view. We'd like to have the lowest tax possible. And that will often mean moving money into a lower tax environment or to super that's going to be zero tax when you retire. And as you get closer and closer to retirement, that becomes more and more critical. So yeah, it's a case that one structure doesn't fit everybody. You have to be specific to the person's circumstances.
And do you see that changing throughout their life cycle as well, Roy? You know, depending on where they are, what's going on?
It actually does, because when you might be a 30-year-old just going into business or just starting up as a carpenter in business, even working for somebody, your goals are not going to be as focused on superannuation and retirement as they might be focused on getting the next work van, or getting enough for a deposit on a house, or getting a residual income so you can fund some children's school fees. So those focuses, super's always going to be there with a 9.5%, but the focuses shift through the life cycle of any individual.
Yeah, good point. So there's not only is it not one answer for anybody, but it's not the same answer the whole time.
Correct. It changes as their circumstances, ages change.
Yeah, good point. Thanks.
So what can we do? And one of the things that we can do is smooth the purchase price. So that is dollar cost averaging. Now, and that's dollar cost averaging is the purchasing of assets on a consistent basis so that you have a smoothing effect, because obviously the prices of things are never smooth, so they go up and down, and you'll end up with the average price. And I can tell you now that I have since this pandemic started, so I'll say late February, certainly early March, is that I've had I've got a list of clients. In fact, clients that have written into me, 35 of those actually that have written into me to say, look, I've got $10,000, I've got 20,000, 50, 100, or whatever the amount is, looking to be able to purchase in. And some people have found it somewhere. There's some clients I'm really surprised about, and what they're looking to do is take advantage of this downturn, and by doing that, they're actually lowering their cost base and gives them a lower average price as well. Because this downturn that we've just recently seen and had, I'm not saying it's over yet, but certainly from where we've been, is that that has taken us back from a overall market point of view, back, well, it took us at one point back 7 years. In saying that, we are now back where I think as of this morning, before today's, I think we were up 2.5% not too long ago, but before this morning, we were down 7% over the last 12 months. So buying in at a lower base certainly helps your cost base and smooths out the average price. Take advantage of the benefits of compound interest. From little things, big things grow. I know Paul loves this graph, this is a graphic of investing $10,000 and the difference of investing within the index versus getting an active return. And that active return has been 3.5% higher return on a per annum basis over that period of time. And so over that period of time, we've seen this fund return 13.4% on a per annum basis. We saw that the market did about 9.9%, so 3.5% difference. The difference in overall outcome is 4.4 times the wealth.
That doesn't sound much until you say the number.
No,
800,000 to 3.6 mil. That's a big jump.
Significant difference.
But for 3.5, and I've been in meetings where, you too, KP, but with Tony, where clients have said, 3.5% is not a great amount, but you look at it compounding and what a difference it makes. Tony, what sort of things you're doing to make that difference there? That, it's not much, but geez, it adds up.
It adds up, and so I'll talk about the investment committee side to begin with. The first thing that we look at from the investment committee is looking at good companies, and looking at good companies with strong balance sheets, looking at good cash flow, and then looking at, we take into it, so from an economic point of view, we also take into account currency, we'll take into account GDP, we'll take into account unemployment, we'll take into account economic factors around that. to come up with portfolios, different portfolios, because no one portfolio is the same for two people. So we'll come up with a number of different portfolios. And so as an example, if you're sitting in front of me as a client, I'll look at your circumstances. So like, okay, look, I think, and KP will do the same, based on your circumstances, we think we need A, B, C, and they're the portfolios we'll put together. And that is, from that perspective, where we come up with the relevant funds. The one thing I'll also talk about, and I'll talk about, and it also relates to dollar cost averaging and also markets. The one thing is in relation to superannuation. And I know it's a relevant topic at the moment, is the people taking out $10,000 out of their super at this stage to help for lifestyle, or lifestyle is probably the wrong word, living expenses. I'm going to use an example. I had a client call me and he said, look, he said, his name's Rod. Rod called me and he said, look, somebody at work's taking $10,000 out of their super. Do you think it's a good idea that I do that? And I said, Rod, I don't know the other person's circumstances, but tell me about why you think, and what would you do with the money? He said, oh, look, I'd take it out of super and I'd then pop it onto my mortgage. And then I proceeded to explain to Rod why that is not a great idea at all. And this graphic actually goes a long way to explaining that. At worst, let's say he's paying 3.5% on his mortgage. All right, it's not more than that. It's so 3.5%. Whereas he's got his superannuation that will compound over time. Now, Rod is 50. He was 50 last year. 50 last year. So he's got 15 years to retirement, give or take. And the difference of compounding up 15 years versus the difference of compounding down over that period of time at 3.5%, there's a significant difference. So as a result, and he got it straight away. He said, no, sorry, I called. It's all good. I've got it. And away you go. However, it's a relevant point at this point in time. So for those people that are actually still thinking about being able to access a super, only if you're extremely desperate and you need the money to live, to put food on the table, that's probably the only reason that I'd look at it.
Yeah, thanks, mate. You've answered a couple of questions that have been coming there as well. One that could be talked about now, maybe this is for you, KP. How do you think liquid assets versus our fixed assets will affect the way we invest in the future? So people are talking about what, obviously that's cash versus what they've got their fixed assets. Do you think we need to be aware of that when we're starting to understand, like Tony's just presented something talking about active management, understanding your investment classes and where you get real benefit from having good quality assets? What do you think this is for Max? How would you answer his question? Understanding personal liquidity versus fixed assets.
Paul, that's a great question. I think the way we handle it is to make sure that there's always enough emergency cash for people to rely on. The first thing that undoes an investment strategy is if people get fully invested and then something happens to them and they have to actually tap into their growth. The other thing that we do is usually do a pronged approach where we have emergency cash, people to live off their cash, have liquid growth investments, and will have longer term growth investments as well. What this does is it spreads out the income over a long period of time and helps feed the cash. If we don't have emergency cash, if we don't build that into our equation, and it's just basically, it can be very different for different people. It could be having a year's worth of income necessary. It could be 6 months worth. For some people, it's 2 years worth. Then no investment strategy needs to be unwound when we have a market where you might have to draw on a little bit of growth. And coming back to what Tony said before, people who have felt the need that they have to tap into their superannuation under emergency situations because they're short is really about the fact they probably didn't have a cash buffer that they could lean on during those times.
So what you're saying is have a structure in place that will work for you and your goals, regardless of what the market's doing. So the market's less of a concern. The strategy will work. Growth
is irrelevant in the overall picture. It's about the quality of the investments that you have and what they're doing for you. And as both Roy and Tony were talking, it's about the structure. So making sure that it's set in the right structure so you're not paying too much tax if you need to sell anything in the future, but making sure that the need to sell is less and less because you've got it packed with some cash buffer at all times.
Yeah, great insight. Thanks, KP. Much appreciated. There's a couple more questions coming through, guys, but I'm going to let Tony continue. Some of these questions we'll cover soon. Some will cover it in Tony's presentation. Some will come to the end. So thanks. A great engaging crowd. Thanks, Tony.
Cheers, Paul. Click back. Here we go. And so take care of your nest egg. So wealth strategies to take care of your nest egg. I will say this is that, and we've spoken a little bit about superannuation. I'm not going to spend too much time about this because this is a whole different presentation in its own. And we will spend time and we will have a separate superannuation presentation. But the one thing that I will say is that we're now sitting in June. For those people that do certainly understand it, the question I'll ask you is, are you maximizing your superannuation contribution caps? For those people that don't understand, please get in contact with your RJS accountant and ask a question, and also get in touch with your RJS wealth planner as well, and they'll be able to assist you in terms of looking at that as well. We talk a little bit more about superannuation. I'm going to pass over this because of the interest in time, because I do want to get to some of those questions that are coming through. So I will actually talk about the next step is debt, and not all debt is bad debt. So the one thing, as I touched on earlier, was an example of a client wanting to potentially take out money and pay it down into his home loan at, let's say, 3.5%. The one thing that we do know at the moment is that debt is cheap and borrowing is cheap. So the ability to go out and borrow is there if you've got the right cash flow. Now, with every strategy, as KP has mentioned, everything that we do from a planning perspective is based on cash flow. We've got to be able to have the cash flow to be able to do those things. So the first thing that we'll look at is cash flow, and the question that we'll ask in relation to your goals is, what are you looking to achieve? And if it is, look, I want to pay my home loan down faster. One of the common things that we do come across is, look, what I want to actually do is I want to pay my home loan down off first, and then once I've paid that, then I'll look to do something. And what you'll hear from us is that you can have your cake and eat it too. And you can do that today based on cash flow. And the advantage you have is that we can actually then, as a result of that, and this is one of the strategies that the team will discuss with you in person, is that we can actually pay your home loan down faster as a result. So that's something that is certainly available and something that you can take advantage of in the current low interest rate environment.
Yeah. So a good question I've heard you ask Tony in meetings, and I love it, is who's actually setting your debt structure? Is it you or the bank?
Absolutely.
It's a vastly different structure if you're taking control of it instead of having the bank run it.
Yeah, and that's where, even from a wealth perspective, if you're getting your home loan looked at or whatever the case is, have a chat to an advisor, because the advisor will bring a certainly a different lens in terms of what we're looking to do or what you're looking to do. And at worst, if it is what it is, no problems, but at least you've actually sought that advice and got it. Whereas what we tend to find is, look, people just go into their bank or see a broker and say, well, okay, look, go have I'm after this, and you'll end up with what you've asked for. I know the RJS lending team is fantastic in terms of regularly chatting to the advice team and saying, well, look, this client's looking for this. Is this the right structure? Should we look at this? And then we can actually look at that combined from a wealth as well as a finance perspective as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
What to consider during times like these? So the stock market has overcome past bear markets and unsettling news. So World War II, Cuban Missile Crisis, oil embargoes, Black Monday, tech bubbles, GFCs, Corona outbreak. We will need to update this graphic. This is only a month old, but with all the things that have been going on over the last week or two, the little line should be now pointing about even with where that, where the close to the highest point, especially because this is US based. The future way and the direction that the market goes is always up. And the reason behind that is because companies are in business to make a profit. And if companies are in business to make a profit, right? Or let me put it another way. If companies weren't in business to make a profit, why do they exist? So if companies are in business to make a profit, they aim to make more money next year than they did this year. Okay, and they hopefully made more money this year. They certainly aim to make more money this year than they did last year. Do they always get it right? No, and we can see the current example, the current environment as the example. Okay, but businesses are in business to make money, and as a result, if you're investing in those businesses, okay, and you've got good balance sheets, you've got good cash flow, they will typically do extremely well over a long period of time, and that's what effectively we're investing in. And don't let emotions lead you astray. And easily done. And I can tell you that, and you'll see here, where the market was. I'll skip through to the 2000s, but where after the GFC, we had panic stations. Then we were hopeful, encouraged, and things were positive, and people were confident. I can tell you the amount of phone calls that we took from November, phone calls, emails, communications from November to mid-February of new clients coming to the business saying, look, I've got some money I'm looking to invest. And the one thing that we've had to do as advisors is sit down with those clients and really understand their circumstances. Say, well, why are you looking to invest? Are you looking to invest because you're after a quick buck because the market's going up, or are you looking to invest for the longer term? And that's really important to understand, because if you're after a quick buck, that's not what we do. But if you're after a long-term strategy that will help you achieve your goals, whatever they may be, then that's what the advisors can help for you and put together in your place.
So Tone, I've got a lot of questions here saying, I've got cash available. What should I do with this? I've just sold, some real estate. I've got cash. I'm liquid. What do I do? What should I do with my cash reserves? So knowing that, this economic behaviours or clients in the market are going through these emotional states, what do you generally see people doing if they're liquid and they're ready to go? What are you generally seeing people doing here? Because that gives us an insight to buyers' behaviour.
Well, absolutely, and it's and one of the things that we're seeing is, look, having money in cash. As KP mentioned, you need to have money in cash. There's no doubt about it. You need to have something there because when bad times come, right, you need to have enough there to keep you liquid. But at the same time, what do you do? I've always had the philosophy that you should be investing on a regular basis. And the one place where you are doing that, goes back to the dollar cost averaging slide, is that you're doing that in your super. So if you're employed, your 9.5% going there on a regular basis. You're buying in on a monthly basis if your employer's putting in on a monthly, or certainly on a quarterly basis. Okay, but buying assets on a regular basis and dollar cost averaging will get you a better outcome further down the track. What do you do with your cash at this point in time? It depends. And the answer is it depends. It depends what you're looking to achieve. Is now a good time to invest in the market? Absolutely. It's better than what it was 4 months ago, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 2 years ago. Okay, so is now an opportunity. And what you'll actually also see is that some of these companies have done fantastically well even through the downturn. So I mentioned at the last webinar, but companies like your Woolies and Coles were still extremely busy. Bunnings, if I'm working from home, and Kieran will say to me, oh look, can you pop in a Bunnings and we need to get this, or whatever the case is. I go for a 20-minute trip. I come back 3 hours later spending $500 more than what I should have. So there are companies that are still doing extremely well during this downturn. It is, do you want to be a part of those businesses and share in their ride in the direction that they're heading?
Yeah. Thanks.
And finally, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So diversification is the key. As KP mentioned, it is about having something liquid there, but having then money that you have, if you are investing, what are we investing in? We're not just investing in, as an example, Australian assets. We're not just investing in the banks or whatever the case is. The questions that we've answered over the last 3 or 4 months, I've had phone calls coming in saying, oh, look, I'd like to buy the banks. My question will always go back to is, why do you want to do that? It may be right or wrong, the reasoning that you've come up with, but the question we'll always ask is why. And we want to understand your reasoning of why you're looking to do that, so we can understand what you're looking to achieve. We can provide you the solutions that you need. We just need to know what the problem is.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Look, we're getting short on time. I'd like to start to address some of these questions, if you don't mind. We have got a couple of slides, but we'll come back to those if you don't mind.
Yep.
We'll do one more. We'll put some questions here, and we'll come back to those other ones. So if we could just sit that on the question time.
Yeah.
A question for you, KP. Should I be investing now for the long term? And if so, which sector?
We should always be investing for the long term. I think it's quite interesting. We've been talking about Scott Morrison said, we could take $10,000 out of our super, which was part of the conversation. The media have taken that and blown it out and shown people that if they take $10,000 out, it could be up to $140,000 difference in their super. Let's reverse that and put $10,000 in the market right now. In the long term, we're looking at that same figure. So what would you like? Would you actually like to have $10,000 in cash by the time you retire, $140,000? So it's always the length of time that you can stay in the market. It's always the key.
Yeah. Also means that the strategy is not reactive then. It's been planned.
Look, 100%. It's about buying really good quality and the hope that you never sell anything. So the really good quality investments, as Tony has said, they pay very good dividends. Why would you invest in a company that doesn't pay any cash? Why would you have a rental property that doesn't pay any rent? And it helps you compound and continue to build the pyramid of assets. And that's why it's very important to have that plan for you. So that's something that we really spend a lot of time on, plus the structures to make sure that you don't pay too much money in tax along the way.
It's always a good thing. That's always a good thing. One more while I've got you there, KP. This is a great question. Again, from Huey, he's very active today. How much super do I need to invest to retire?
Depends on, we work backwards, as Tony was saying before. So we work at your target amount that you would like to live on. So we look at it like it's your retirement salary. And if it's 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 a year, then basically we bring it back in reality to today's dollars and work out how much capital we need to build for you. We need to set that target first, because that will also denote how much money you need to put in to help it along the way, what sort of assets that you need to have to help it get there. And if there's a gap, we need to address that as well. And it could be something like you wanted to finish earlier than, the normal people that retire. At least you know where you are, and we can help you get to that goal. Yeah,
that's a great point, KP. I'd just like to address one thing there, because I dig a little bit deeper. You mentioned that the starting point is your current wage. In your experience, that's a good place to start as a target?
It's always a good place to start, because that's the way you live now. That's what you use for lifestyle. The key thing that everybody wants to be debt-free in retirement. That's something that's quite important to everyone. So it's basically what you're earning from a lifestyle perspective minus the mortgage payments would make your lifestyle completely comfortable. We don't want to bend. We don't want to go without anything when we retire, especially when we retire these days. We're quite young when we retire. We have many years ahead of us where we can do some spectacular things. So lifestyle income is incredibly important.
Yeah. And again, in your experience, I believe that's considerably more than what the government thinks we need to retire.
Oh, 100%. The government do a lot of statistical analysis of what we need to live on from our bare necessities lifestyle, which is generally around between 37 and 38,000 for the full couple pension. So most couples, if they have that, and they might be living quite tight, but it doesn't allow the extra things. It doesn't allow for holidays. It doesn't allow for up-changing cars, presents, all those sorts of things. So if we want to have a nice lifestyle, I think the average, and this is not for everybody, but the average that I've seen, it's around about $5,000 a month after tax.
Yeah, well, 37 grand a couple's nowhere near enough.
For a couple, yeah.
It's less than 20 grand a year as an annual wage. They're not, and people aren't on that now. So I like that target. What you're on now is a great target to work towards. Thanks, KP. That's a really good target. How do we invest ethically? Is there a possibility to invest ethically? And build, I'll finish that question, and build wealth.
Is that for me or Tony, Paul?
I'll go to Tony for this one. He's had a break.
Yeah, cheers. Look, absolutely. There's ways to invest ethically. Certainly, over the last 10 years, we've had a significant increase in ethical investments. And so the one question that your advisor, KP, Joel, or Trevor will ask you is, number one, what do you mean by ethically? Because your ethics will be completely different to the person beside you. So and it's about getting an understanding of that, and then we'll be able to source the right investments. So as an example, if you want no gambling, or, I don't want anything to do with mining, chalk and cheese. So it will depend on what it means to you, and then we can certainly put together portfolios around that.
Yeah, great. Ethically sustainable, I know they can be very different as well. I know that some of the more sustainable investments don't have or lack the economic data purely because they're new industries, so it makes it very hard to project.
Absolutely.
Something to be aware of. Okay, another one for you, Tony, while I've got you there.
Yep.
This one hasn't got a name, but it's coming from Dandenong. I'd like some information on margin lines for investing in shares.
Okay, very simple. Seek advice, because if you get it wrong, you can do some real damage. So we've got some
Before you go on, mate, could I just get your definition of what a margin loan is for those who don't know?
Yeah, so that is that is borrowing against the shares that you're actually going to purchase, and they'll only lend you up to a certain percentage as well. So as an example, if I've got $50,000 and I can go and borrow an extra, and depending on how much they will lend you, they'll lend you another $30,000 or $50,000 to invest as well, to be used for investments. I would advise at this point in time that you certainly seek advice. I have come across portfolios from other businesses where, or people that have been burnt before. And in fact, there was a very, you may have heard of Storm Financial up here in Queensland, up in Townsville, that were doing it quite a lot as well. And where their clients' portfolios had effectively blew up. So risky strategy. However, when done properly, can be very profitable for you over a long-term period. But it's all about the right ratios, and I can tell you that KP, Joel, Trevor have had extensive training, and they know exactly what they're talking about when it comes to margin lending.
Okay, thank you. Roy, you've had a bit of a break sitting there doing nothing. I've got some great questions here. People are sitting at home, coming into tax season, thinking, how do I pay less tax? So I've got some questions here. What can I claim when I'm working from home? Can I claim my car more? What do I need to show the ATO working from home? What part of my home can I claim? And is there anything I'm missing? My answer is claim everything, but I'll hand over to you before anyone takes that on board.
Oh, we certainly want to maximise the tax deductions while you're working at home. The critical point is that you keep a diary on the hours that you're working from home. 1 month is suitable for the tax office pre-COVID-19, but then the number of months that you're working at home while COVID-19's on. So we'll have a split rate. We've got 2 separate rates we can use, and there'll be a percentage of internet, home office, stationary, when I say home office, light and power. So there's a whole myriad of things, but don't fall into the trap of thinking because you're working at home, automatically my car or my travel is a tax deduction. It doesn't make the car a tax deduction. You're still using the car to drive out and do the shopping and drop the kids off, etc. So you'll have a logbook that actually determines what percentage is work related. And just because you are spending some time at home, so I may wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and work between 6 and 7 in my home office, and then at 7 o'clock I drive to the office, that does not make my trip from home to work a tax deduction. So don't fall into that trap.
Okay. A follow-on question. If I'm working from home, 3 days a week, does a portion of my mortgage then become deductible as well?
If we were to claim a portion of your mortgage, when you sell the family home, you actually have to pay capital gains tax. When we run the numbers, it's just not worth it. The benefit is so much less than what the cost is later. So we would normally not claim a percentage of your mortgage for that reason and that reason alone.
Yeah. It's a good indication that the complexities are not always black and white.
Very true. Before, I know we're about to finish up, and you maybe have a few more questions, but can I just add a couple of pointers before I call it quits for the day? Yeah. The comment about when's a good time to invest, and I agree 100% with Tony, it's always a good time to invest. But right now, I'm not the financial planner in the room. I'm the accountant giving tax advice. From an outside point of view, boy, if I wanted to push somebody in to get some advice, I'd be doing it right now. Despite all the commentary about it's always a good time, right now is it. And if I had the ability to get money from the bank at 2 to 3% and put it in the market, just the return from dividends will beat that.
And while we're having some technical issues there, we'll come back. come back to some more questions. That's a good insight, Roy, and I think it's a big value of RJS. You've got everybody there. You can ask those questions on the day, or you can do it during your meeting. So it's fantastic. I think as we start to wrap this up, ladies and gentlemen, something I would like to remind everybody that everybody here today will have the ability, free of charge, complimentary, to speak to an advisor, one of the RJS team. We're going to offer 30 minutes, and that'll allow you to speak very personally about your exact situation, your exact goals, and get a more detailed and fuller answer from one of the professionals who can ask some more specific questions of you as well. So bear that in mind. Everyone will be offered that. Today's has been recorded, so if you'd like to watch it again or you'd like to share that, please feel free to do so. But also, just as importantly, our upcoming webinars, I think, is one of the best topics we're doing. Now, our topics are driven by you. We get feedback and ideas. You guys will be asked to give some feedback today too, which we very much appreciate. And the webinar series will continue. The next one is outstanding. What questions are the most successful people ask their accountant at tax time? So these are the most successful people financially and in lifestyle. They have everything that they're after. They have a strategy and plan in place. They feel very secure as a household and as a family. They know where they're going. They know the time frames to do that. And they're talking to us not about finances anymore, but now they're talking about their financial goals and their personal goals and how they're achieving them. And a great insight to how that started is the questions they asked their accountant come tax time. You'll be surprised. And I can tell you, it wasn't how do I pay less tax. It was a whole lot more than that. The discussion and the breadth of the information was fantastic. So we're going to share some of those insights and some stories. Roy and his team has great insights, as do Trevor, Joel, and KP. So we're going to go over that in a couple of weeks. So that's a fantastic opportunity. To wrap up with, we've had a bit of an IT issue there. We do have a wrap-up slide. I can read them because I can still see them. So before we go, the real key strategies that we'd like you to take out of today is, number one, seek professional advice. You're surrounded by great professionals who are fantastic people willing to work for you and help you at RJS. They're a phone call away. At the moment, they're a Zoom or a phone call away or an email away. As time progresses, of course, we can do face-to-face, but they're very, very happy to talk at all times with us all over the internet. So please take advantage of that. Operate with a budget, cash flow, and a balance sheet. So Roy spoke about the most successful businesses have this down pat and they forecast to it. Tony and KP gave us some insights to the most successful individuals who do that as well. So understanding what you earn, what you spend, and doing something smart with what you got left is a fantastic launching pad to really take control of your financial future and link those to your personal goals to answer some of those questions. So how do I get my lifestyle goals and finances together? You can't do it without understanding your cash flow, your budget, and your balance sheet, because you're not in a position to take advantage of opportunities. Understand your investment strategy. This includes your superannuation as well. So a great question for everybody to ask yourself right now: what's your superannuation investment strategy? Were you involved in it? Is it aligned with your goals and your timelines and your personal situation? And what's your personal investment strategy outside of that? All of them should be working together. And if you don't get them in alignment with your RJS team, you can decrease your tax, you can increase your income, you can increase your wealth, you can retire sooner, you can pay your home off faster, and you can be in a better place come retirement. Looking at, as KP said, earning as much as you are now, because I guarantee you're going to spend it, so you might as well have it. So making sure your investment strategy is completely understood and links with you. Sticking to the plan. The best time to plant a tree was yesterday. The best time to have a plan was yesterday, and sticking to that. Now that does not mean, I'll clarify by sticking to it, it does not mean tick and leave. Your plans do not sit in your top drawer for 20 years. They are continually reviewed. So sticking to the plan means sticking to your goals, sticking to your objections, and sticking to your obligations of continuing to seek ongoing advice and working with your professional to map your lifestyle as it changes. Roy gave some great insights to that earlier. Bouts of volatility are normal. Things go wrong. That's okay. Be prepared for them. They go up and down. In fact, they can be opportunities. Regularly invest. Taking the time to understand your cash flow and continue to purchase. It mitigates risk enormously, opens you up to opportunities, and really flattens out that curve. Reduce potential risk. Diversification is key, as are a number of the other strategies we've spoken about. Really, investment is about a risk discussion. What's your goal? How would you like to get there? What's the gap? Something that Roy does with his business owners. But more importantly, or just as importantly, how do we bridge that gap in a risk minimization way? How do we get you there without overstating or getting you to do your goals without taking on extra risk. There's no need to take extra risk. So understanding that is really key. Recognise the opportunities. That's our job, but it's also our job to work with our clients. And here's a good one. This one's easier to say, but harder to do in life and in your investment strategies for retirees and wealth accumulators. Don't let your emotions take control of your investment strategies. You're in control. It's your goals. It's your cash flow. It's your money. It's your lifestyle. We really want to work with you. Take the emotion out of it and get the facts. Be educated. Be empowered to ensure the security of your own family and make educated choices. Don't let the emotions run away with it. And certainly don't let your mates' emotions run away with it too when they tell you stories. Make sure it's about you. Make sure it's individualised and speak to a professional at RJS. That's it, guys. To my team of professionals, thank you very much. For a quick wrap up, 2 words, KP, or 3 words. What's your biggest suggestion to people on the end of the line today?
6 words. Can I have 6?
Okay, go. 6.
Yeah. Start small rather than not at all.
Oh, I like it.
That's awesome.
Yes, nice. Nice. Tony?
Oh, just do something. Do something.
Do something. Yep.
Yeah.
Roy?
Now is a great time.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's always a good time, but now it's fantastic. So to my panelists, thank you very much for your time and insights. Very much appreciate. For you at home, thank you for registering today. Please keep the questions coming. Those I haven't got to, we will come back to you. You've got the full RJS team at your disposal. Enjoy, take advantage of them. Give them a call, and we look forward to seeing you on the 25th for our next webinar, and of course your feedback. Have a great day, guys. Have a great day, panelists. Thank you very much, everyone. See you later.